The Little Star Who Wanted to Shine Brighter. Chapter 1. The Magical Forest. Once upon a time, in a far-off land, there was a magical forest where fairies, unicorns, and talking animals lived. The forest was filled with tall trees, colorful flowers, and sparkling streams that flowed throughout. The animals that lived in the forest were kind and gentle, and the fairies were always there to help anyone in need. One day, a young boy named Jack stumbled upon the magical forest. Jack had wandered away from his home and had lost his way in the woods. He was scared and didn't know what to do. As he wandered through the forest, he saw a beautiful fairy with glittering wings, and he asked her for help. The fairy, whose name was Twinkle, was kind and offered to help Jack find his way back home. She also told him about the magical forest and its inhabitants. Jack was amazed by the magical forest and all its wonders. He saw unicorns running freely, birds singing melodious songs, and animals living in harmony with each other. He had never seen anything like it before. Twinkle led Jack through the forest and showed him all the magical places. She showed him the giant tree where the fairies lived, the river where the water dragons swam, and the flower meadow where the butterflies danced. As the sun started to set, Twinkle told Jack that it was time for him to go home. She gave him a magical charm to keep him safe on his journey and reminded him that he was always welcome to visit the magical forest whenever he wanted. Jack thanked Twinkle for her kindness and started his journey back home. He realized that he had never felt so alive and happy before. From that day on, he visited the magical forest every chance he got, and he made many friends in the forest. The magical forest became Jack's favorite place in the world, and he felt lucky to have stumbled upon it that day. He knew that the forest was a special place, and he felt grateful for all the kindness and wonder it had brought into his life. Chapter 2. The Mischievous Imp. One day, as Jack was wandering through the magical forest, he heard strange noises coming from behind the bushes. Curious, he peeked through the foliage and saw a small imp, who was causing mischief all around. The imp was small and mischievous, with a pointy nose and a mischievous grin. He had stolen the fairies' wands and was playing pranks on the animals in the forest. Jack knew he had to do something to stop the imp from causing more trouble. He approached the imp and asked him why he was causing trouble. The imp replied that he was bored and needed some excitement in his life. Jack realized that the imp needed a positive outlet for his energy and suggested that he help the fairies instead of causing trouble. The imp was skeptical at first, but Jack convinced him to help the fairies with the daily tasks. The imp agreed and started helping the fairies with their chores, such as collecting berries and tending to the flowers. As the days went by, the imp started to enjoy helping the fairies. He learned new skills and made many friends in the forest. He realized that he didn't need to cause mischief to have fun and that helping others could be just as rewarding. The fairies were grateful for the imp's help, and they rewarded him with a new wand of his own. With his new wand, the imp was able to do magic tricks and help the animals in the forest. Jack was happy to see that the imp had turned over a new leaf and was now using his energy for good. He learned that sometimes, all it takes is a little kindness to change someone's behavior. From that day on, the imp became a valuable member of the forest community. He had learned his lesson and was now a kind and helpful creature, spreading joy and happiness throughout the magical forest. Chapter 3. The Enchanted Garden. One day, Jack stumbled upon a secret garden in the heart of the magical forest. The garden was filled with colorful flowers, fruit trees, and exotic plants he had never seen before. It was a peaceful and tranquil place, and Jack felt at ease just being there. As he walked around the garden, he noticed that every flower and plant was in perfect harmony with each other. He saw bees buzzing from flower to flower, birds singing melodious tunes, and even a small family of rabbits nibbling on some carrots. Jack realized that the garden was enchanted, and he wondered who could have created such a magical place. He decided to explore the garden further, and as he turned a corner, he saw a woman tending to the flowers. The woman was beautiful, with long hair the color of sunshine and a smile that lit up the entire garden. She introduced herself as the guardian of the enchanted garden and welcomed Jack with open arms. She showed Jack around the garden and told him about the magic that made the garden thrive. She explained that the garden was a place of healing and that many animals came to the garden to find peace and comfort. Jack was amazed by the garden's beauty and the peace it brought him. He felt a sense of calmness that he had never experienced before. He knew that he would come back to the garden whenever he needed to find peace and comfort. As Jack was leaving the garden, the guardian handed him a seed and told him to plant it in his own garden. She explained that the seed held the magic of the enchanted garden and would bring peace and happiness to his life. Jack thanked the guardian and left the garden, feeling grateful for the experience. He planted the seed in his own garden and watched it grow into a beautiful plant that brought him peace and happiness whenever he needed it. From that day on, Jack visited the enchanted garden whenever he needed to find peace and comfort. He realized that the garden was a magical place that had the power to heal and bring happiness to anyone who visited it. Chapter 4: The Talking Tree. As Jack continued his adventures in the magical forest, he stumbled upon a tree that was unlike any other he had ever seen before. This tree was old and wise, with a face carved into its trunk and a voice that spoke to him. Jack was startled at first, but he soon realized that the tree was friendly and wanted to talk to him. The tree introduced himself as Old Oak and told Jack that he had lived in the forest for centuries. He had seen many things and had a lot of wisdom to share. Old Oak told Jack about the history of the magical forest and the creatures that lived there. He talked about the importance of nature and how every creature in the forest had a role to play in maintaining the balance of the ecosystem. Jack was fascinated by Old Oak's stories and wisdom. He realized that there was so much he didn't know about the forest and the creatures that lived there. He asked Old Oak if he could come back and talk to him again. Old Oak smiled and told Jack that he was always welcome to come back and talk to him. He encouraged Jack to explore the forest and learn more about the creatures that lived there. From that day on, Jack visited Old Oak whenever he needed advice or guidance. Old Oak became a mentor to Jack, and he learned many valuable lessons from him. Jack realized that the forest was more than just a magical place. It was a place of learning and growth, where he could gain wisdom and knowledge from the creatures that lived there. As he left Old Oak, Jack promised to come back and visit him soon. He knew that he had found a friend in the talking tree and that their friendship would last a lifetime. Chapter 5: The Mischievous Fairy. One day, as Jack was exploring the magical forest, he stumbled upon a mischievous fairy named Pixie. Pixie was small and nimble, with sparkling wings and mischievous eyes. She loved to play pranks on the creatures of the forest, and Jack soon found himself becoming her target. At first, Jack was annoyed by Pixie's antics. She would steal his hat and hide it in the trees, or sprinkle him with fairy dust, making him sneeze uncontrollably. But as he spent more time with her, he realized that Pixie was just trying to have fun and make the most of her time in the magical forest. Jack began to play along with Pixie's pranks and soon found himself having fun with her. They would race through the forest, chase each other through the trees, and play hide and seek in the bushes. As they played, Jack realized that Pixie had a lot of knowledge about the forest and the creatures that lived there. She knew which berries were safe to eat, which streams were the cleanest, and which creatures were friendly. Jack began to see Pixie in a different light. He realized that she wasn't just mischievous, but she was also smart and wise. She had a lot to teach him about the forest and its inhabitants. As the sun began to set, Pixie bid Jack farewell and flew off into the sunset. Jack realized that he had gained a new friend in the forest, and he looked forward to spending more time with Pixie and learning from her. From that day on, Jack and Pixie became good friends. They would play pranks on each other, explore the forest together, and share their knowledge of the magical world around them. Pixie taught Jack the importance of having fun and not taking life too seriously, and he realized that sometimes it was good to be mischievous. Chapter 6: The Enchanted Lake. One day, as Jack was wandering through the magical forest, he came across a beautiful lake that shimmered in the sunlight. The water was crystal clear, and he could see fish swimming in the depths below. As he approached the lake, he felt a sense of peace and calmness wash over him. As he sat by the lake, he noticed that the water seemed to glow in the sunlight. He reached down to touch the water, and as his fingers brushed the surface, he felt a jolt of electricity run through his body. He quickly withdrew his hand and watched in amazement as the water began to swirl and glow. Suddenly, a beautiful mermaid emerged from the depths of the lake. She had long flowing hair, sparkling green eyes, and a tail of shimmering scales. Jack was amazed by her beauty and asked her name. The mermaid introduced herself as Marina and welcomed Jack to the enchanted lake. She explained that the lake had magical properties and that anyone who touched the water would be filled with positive energy and good luck. Marina showed Jack around the lake, pointing out the different creatures that lived there. There were schools of colorful fish, playful otters, and even a family of water nymphs who sang beautiful songs as they swam. As Jack spent time with Marina, he felt himself becoming more and more relaxed. He realized that the enchanted lake was a place of healing and rejuvenation, and he felt grateful to have stumbled upon it. As the sun began to set, Jack said goodbye to Marina and promised to come back and visit her soon. He knew that the enchanted lake was a special place, and he felt lucky to have experienced its magic. From that day on, Jack would often return to the enchanted lake, seeking its healing properties and the company of Marina. He knew that the magical forest was full of surprises, and he looked forward to discovering more of its secrets. Chapter 7: The Forbidden Forest. One day, Jack was exploring the magical forest when he came across a sign that read, "Forbidden Forest." Jack had heard stories about the Forbidden Forest from other creatures in the forest. They warned him that it was a dangerous place and that no one who entered ever returned. But Jack was curious. He had never been one to shy away from adventure, and the Forbidden Forest seemed like a mystery that he had to uncover. He took a deep breath and stepped past the sign, venturing deeper into the forest. The trees grew taller and thicker, and the air became thick and humid. Jack felt a sense of foreboding, but he pushed on, determined to discover the secrets of the Forbidden Forest. As he walked, he noticed strange sounds coming from the trees. The branches rustled, and the leaves whispered, but he couldn't see any creatures around him. He felt a sense of unease and knew that he was getting deeper into the Forbidden Forest. Suddenly, he heard a loud growling sound. It was coming from behind a large tree. Jack tiptoed towards the tree and peeked around the side. To his surprise, he saw a giant, fierce-looking wolf. Jack was frightened but knew he had to keep his cool. He slowly stepped back and began to quietly make his way back towards the sign. But as he turned around, he realized that he had been surrounded by a pack of wolves. He knew he had no chance of outrunning them, so he decided to stand his ground. He stood tall and held his ground, hoping that the wolves would see him as a worthy opponent. Suddenly, one of the wolves stepped forward and began to circle him. Jack slowly turned to face the wolf and stared him directly in the eyes. To his surprise, the wolf backed down and the rest of the pack followed. As the wolves disappeared back into the forest, Jack breathed a sigh of relief. He realized that he had entered the Forbidden Forest without proper preparation and had put himself in danger. He knew that he had to be more careful in the future and that sometimes, the thrill of adventure could come at a cost. From that day on, Jack was more cautious in his exploration of the magical forest. He knew that there were still secrets to uncover, but he also knew that he had to respect the dangers that lay ahead. Chapter 8: The Return Home. As Jack journeyed through the magical forest, he realized that he had been away from home for a long time. He missed his family and his familiar surroundings, and he knew that it was time to return home. He packed his bag and started on the journey back, retracing his steps through the forest. As he walked, he thought about all the amazing experiences he had had in the magical forest. He had met incredible creatures, seen beautiful landscapes, and discovered secrets that he never could have imagined. But as he got closer to home, he realized that he was also grateful for the simple things that he had taken for granted. The warm embrace of his family, the comfort of his own bed, and the familiar sights and sounds of his home. As he arrived at his doorstep, he was greeted by his family with open arms. They had missed him dearly and were overjoyed to have him back home. They listened intently as he told them stories of his adventures in the magical forest, amazed by the incredible things he had experienced. As he settled back into his normal routine, Jack knew that he would never forget his time in the magical forest. He would always treasure the memories and the lessons he had learned along the way. And as he closed his eyes at night, he would imagine the magic of the forest and the endless adventures that lay ahead. Because he knew that the magic of the forest would always be with him, wherever he went, and that the adventure never truly ended.